You've thought about how you feed your body, but have you also thought about how you feed your brain? Imagine that I switched my diet to an Oreo cookie only diet from today. What would happen? Pretty soon, it will be very unpleasant to be me, wouldn't it? I would probably have all kinds of digestive issues. I would start putting on weight. My skin would probably break out, and I generally just feel terrible. And the longer I do it, the longer I eat only Oreos, the worse it gets. Eventually, it'd probably kill me, right? And nobody would be surprised. So if you have this person who's super overweight, terrible skin, miserable, depressed, and now they're dead, and you're like, what happened? Well, they ate only Oreos. You could be like, well, okay, that's what did they expect, right? But of course, if I do the Oreo diet for a while, I feel terrible, and then I start feeding myself real, healthy, whole foods again, what happens? Well, I get better. It becomes more pleasant to be me. My body starts looking and feeling better, and so on. Again, no surprise. I think this is obvious to most people at this point, but what's funny is that the exact same thing is true for how you feed your brain, how you feed your mind, but we seem to be totally unaware of it. Like, how many people spend most of their free time like scrolling through TikTok or some other feed on their phone, where you're just getting like snippets of short stuff that's all made to just push your emotional buttons and get your attention. Everything is shallow, and most things are like aggressively stupid because, well, you have to get attention at all costs, right? This is what you're feeding your mind with. And the consequences of that are just like feeding your body nothing but Oreos. It is junk food for your brain. And the same is true for other kinds of junk food for the brain. Like maybe you're watching news all day and it's all doom and gloom. Everything is terrible. Everyone's angry at everyone else, right? Maybe you're on Reddit or on other social media, on Twitter or whatever, where people are constantly angrily shouting at each other about whatever the current thing is. Maybe you fall into one of the many rabbit holes that await on the internet. You know, you start watching something on YouTube and then the next recommendation is a more extreme version of that. And before you know it, you're down some rabbit hole where everyone's insane, basically. And as a consequence of that, of course, you are miserable. Of course, you feel bad. Of course, you have negative thoughts. Of course, it's no longer nice to be you. This applies to pornography too. Pornography is a form of junk food for your mind, and of course it has all kinds of negative effects on your mental well-being and your mindset. And the solution is also exactly the same as with the food example. Like, if you don't want this, start feeding your mind better. Just like with the physical body and food, it doesn't take that long before you notice big differences, right? If you switch away from this brain junk food to some real stuff, like you start reading some books, for example, you'll be surprised at how quickly your mind changes and how quickly it changes what it's like to be you. But there's another factor here that we also need to talk about. Because yes, one part is the input, right? What food do I eat? And while that's really important for my overall health and well-being, the other part is my output. How do I use and move my body? And if I do both of these things well, that gives me peak health. The same is true for your mind. You have the input, the consumption, but you also have output, creation. And this is another thing that loads of us are just missing. Just like if I sit on a couch all day and don't move my body, it is going to lead to suffering. If I'm consuming all day, if I'm consuming information and entertainment all day, but I'm never producing, I'm never creating, it is going to lead to misery. So start feeding your brain better, deeper, more wholesome content, and start creating. Create anything. You can write, like journaling is a very simple thing to do. You just start writing. That's a creative process. Maybe you start making content instead of just consuming it. Or you start creating, building, doing something creative, something output focused in the real world. Any form of doing something is a creative outlet. And if you have a better balance of consumption to creation, you'll be surprised at how quickly you feel better. So let's not be surprised at the results of the things we do to ourselves anymore, shall we? And if you're here to quit porn, keep this in mind. Because yes, one of the things you're doing is you're removing that form of junk food, but make sure to get even further and get even better results by also changing the balance of consumption and creation in your life. So let me know what you're going to stop consuming and what you're going to start creating by leaving a comment below. And also watch this video next to level up your life.